and my thoughts go out to them. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, Claire. And now I'm going to ask Andrew Murray, who's on the National Executive of the Union Unite, and also many of you know him as Chair of the Stop the War Coalition. Andrew Murray, thank you.
Thank you, Romain, and on behalf of Unite, congratulate the Coalition of Resistance and Barrack for taking the initiative in organising this meeting. This is the moment when we can all see our society is in crisis and where the left, however broadly defined, has to have something to say and has to find a way to give a lead. But let me say straight away, in my opinion, if giving a lead by the left only means thinking about giving a lead to the young people who've been on the streets this last week, then we're making a mistake. We have to have something intelligible to say also to the people sticking those post-it notes on a wall in Peckham because they're distressed what's happened to their community. We have to have something to say to those who've been burnt out of their homes. And we have to have something to say to the bus drivers who have been, and they are members of my union who've been terrified to go to work these last few days. If we don't have something to say to them as well that makes sense about the situation, then we, the left, are not going to come out ahead. Now, the second point I want to make is if you want to find out what's going on, it's often good to listen to what people say. For example, I've always taken the view that if people commit a crime like blowing themselves up on a tube, suicide bombers, and they say it is because of what we are doing in Iraq, then it probably is because of what we are doing in Iraq, however wrong it is. And if we listen to what is being said now, I'll just give you 2 or 3 examples. The 2 women, young women on BBC, interviewed on BBC, who are involved in the riots in Croydon, saying it's because we want to show the rich that we can do what we want. Example 2, a man, a citizen who was helping to protect Clapham Junction at the time of the riots, saying, again on BBC, do you know they were chanting at us, you are rich and we are poor. Now, if people are saying that, it probably relates to why they are doing it. Example 3, in Nottingham 2 nights ago, 6 police stations were attacked. Now, you don't attack police stations to get a pair of trainers or a plasma television. You do it because you're angry at the police. So let's just accept that if it might be an oversimplification to say all this happens because of unemployment or deprivation or the cuts, it is not an oversimplification to say it happens because of class and it happens because of power in our society. So a lot of this is about powerlessness, and it is not about what Boris Johnson calls the endless sense of entitlement. If he wants to see endless sense of entitlement, he should go back to Henley-on-Thames and not hang around in Hackney. Nor is it right for Theresa May to say in Parliament today, it's all down to gangs, they're all violent and they're all criminal. I did think, well, since she sits around the cabinet table with half the Bullingdon Club, she might be well placed to know what a criminal gang looks like. But in actual fact, if young people are denied any other point of association or any other point of entry into society, then of course gangs, which I think is a very crude word to describe these forms of association young people have, will develop. And now we're having a political argument as to how to respond. And it's interesting how all of those who most of the time say they've got to shrink the state, we've got to shrink the state, and now suddenly want the state to swell, only the bit of the state. It's an old tradition going back hundreds of years in this country of people that will pay absolutely nothing to relieve poverty, but pay absolutely anything to repress the poor. A sign of consensus going. Leaving aside the top of the government, almost everyone seems to want the cuts to stop. Most of us say we want the cuts to youth services to stop. Some are saying they want the cuts to the police service to stop. There is at least an underlying common ground here that very few people indeed are happy with how our society looks this week. And I think if there is a common ground that goes beyond that slightly negative point, is huge numbers of people realise that if inequality develops beyond a certain point, society as a concept starts to lose its meaning. And it certainly cannot be held together by a public power like the police, alienated from so many communities, alienated from society, and only attached to society by the very frayed rope of democratically elected politicians who have systematically disgraced themselves on one front after another for the last 10 years and now lack all credibility to lecture society on how it should behave. We have a discredited ruling elite, a ruling class in this country. It's been discredited by war, it's got discredited politicians who shame themselves with their expenses, it's got discredited bankers and the feckless rich, discredited media, and even before recent events, a police force largely discredited for having spent all its time dining with Rupert Murdoch and his friends. And it is this elite, which is not only presiding over what's happened this week, that is facing an enormous economic wave coming towards us as their unresolved crisis of 2008 turns into a sovereign debt crisis. And when that wave crashes down on our society under these circumstances, unless we have something to say about how things should change, we are looking at a disaster. So we have to demand an end to the cuts and an end to the whole policy of capitalist austerity being imposed on our society. We have to end the estrangement of the policing function from society. Yes, we have to tackle inequality radically. We have to do more. We have to find a way to connect. Now, I'm here representing Unite. And I'd just like to mention that before all this, Unite had decided to, for the first time, extend its membership to the community, to people who aren't in work, who are on benefit, who are unemployed, or who are students, to try and reconnect the organisations of organised labour with the working class communities. I don't pretend that's a solution as a whole, but it is a step in the right direction. I'd like to make just one final point before finishing. We don't just live in a capitalist society, we live in an imperialist society. I think millions of people around the world understand that. There was a time 110 years ago when people like Cecil Rhodes thought that imperialism was the answer to social discontent in our country. Today, imperialism aggravates it at every turn. It stokes up the racism. It wastes millions and billions of pounds on wars abroad. And let's not forget that the worst that is happening in Britain today is better than what is happening in Afghanistan and Libya. And if the Treasury has a contingency fund, which it has taken £250 million out of this year to bomb Libya, it can take some of that money out to address these problems. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying if they can bomb Tripoli, they can sort out the problems of Tottenham. I'm saying stop bombing Tripoli to sort out Tottenham. Stop occupying Kandahar to solve the problems of Clapham Junction. Stop the walls and stop the cuts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew Murray. And from the widest viewpoint, from the international, from a global framework, to the intensely human, our next guest, Josie Fraser, is the mother of Dimitri Fraser, who died at home but under police custody on the 31st of May this year.